to approach a meeting as casually as we approached this one, as far as noise and yickety-yak and so forth. And we feel that it's more appropriate for you to find your seats and make some order and be quiet for a few minutes and try to prepare your mind a little bit, quiet your brain a little, so that when we start to talk, you're in a little bit more receptive frame of mind rather than my having to talk about it like we're doing now. So let's try to make a habit of that when we meet, that we try to get our shuffling done before we meet. In the night, I realized that there were a couple of things that we started to talk about at our last meeting that we didn't finish. Now, I know you have full tummies, and I know that you didn't get much rest last night, and I don't know if you had a chance for a nap today, but I know that probably some of you didn't get a chance. Maybe some of you did. Did some of you have a little nap? Some wanted naps and didn't. Did you get a little nap? Okay. Well, I really want you to do your best to be as alert as you can and as receptive as you can. And I also want you to, if questions come to your mind, if you want to jot a little word or two down so that you remember the question and ask it, I would welcome them. I started telling you last night about T and Do and their jail time, and then something happened and we got on something else, and I thought, well, they could wonder all kinds of things about T and Do and their jail time. So, just to give you a little brief understanding of that, one of our students, the first person that came with us, that said, wherever you're going to go, I want to go if I can. And this, we didn't even know what was happening. We were just starting to awaken, but we had shared with this individual whose vehicle happens to be a sister of one of the vehicles that is in the classroom now. And but we had shared with this individual what we were aware of during our clumsy period of trying to accept some next level minded. And she said, well, is there any way I can tag along? And for a while we said, no, maybe we can meet you for a day or two from town to town. We'll let you know maybe the direction we're going, and we'll meet with you a day or two, and then maybe you go your way, and then we'll meet with you again. And so this went on for a while. And she had a petroleum company credit card that she said, here, this will help you some. I know that your needs are great, so would you, I want you to feel free to use this credit card for gasoline. And funny thing is, I think we used the credit card, I don't know, 2 or 3 times is all that we used it, and we kept feeling uncomfortable about using it. But and we on Christmas Eve, I don't remember the year, but it was the year of Cahotek. I do remember that. What year was that? Anybody know? Okay. 70s, before 75, after 72, somewhere in there. 73 or 4, Christmas at Cahotek. T and I found ourselves in the, T's vehicle and this vehicle, we came from, the vehicles came from environments and backgrounds where we were very comfortable, like many of you all came from comfortable background. But when this change was happening, we were compelled to go with it, and we had no concern for anything else. And in the process, as I began to tell you, friends dropped away, family turned against us, everything, I don't know if you know, some of you knew that this vehicle's dad was a minister, and this was a Presbyterian minister, and then this vehicle had become an Episcopalian and had gone to seminary and had, really upset the Presbyterian minister to go to another denomination and all that. And T was, which I think is extremely interesting symbolism, because T's vehicle was a nurse in the nursery, which, yet T didn't see the infants the way humans viewed infants. T saw them completely different. First thing she'd do is, if she took a special interest in one of the infants, she'd go do a horoscope on them. And of course, T came from a very strong Baptist background, her vehicle did. And but the more that she was beginning to awaken and her life was beginning to fall apart, well, the strange things that happened is that, when T and I met, as this vehicle was visiting someone in the hospital, and T came into the room to administer some prescription to the person in the hospital room. So in addition to tending to the nursery, she also tended to some of the patients in the rooms, and that's where this vehicle met T, was in the room while this vehicle was visiting someone sick in the hospital. And from that day on, it was madness, because there was something that we had to do together, and it was difficult to accept, and I tried to stop it, and T would try to stop it, and yet we were still compelled to do it. We didn't know why we were compelled to do it. And I'm giving you just a real rush. The older classmates have heard this in probably longer form. And during that little time that we were working together, of course, T had family, and this vehicle had already separated from family and children and had gone another direction. And we opened a little place first called Christian Arts Center at the Unitarian Church. And in the Unitarian Church, we were studying everything that people wanted to come and study: Eastern religions, metaphysics, theosophy, and the Unitarians thought it was great. And of course, at the same time, this vehicle was also head of the music of a large Episcopal church in that city. And an article came out that we had opened this Christian Arts Center, where we were going to teach theosophy and study all of these crazy things. And within a week, the vehicle was fired from that task, and people just very rapidly started turning away from us and wanting nothing to do with us. Well, the Christian Arts Center then moved way out in the country in order to try to get away from people, and opened a place called No Place, K-N-O-W. And at No Place, students came there and studied metaphysics and all of it. And of course, this vehicle was studying metaphysics as fast as it could study metaphysics, because T had a real running start. And T had to, try to slow me down, because I was so preoccupied with everything that the vehicle could read, to try to catch up in that study. Now, all of this happened over a period of very few months. Like the Christian Arts Center occurred in the summertime of whatever it was, 72, 73. And by that December 31st or January 1st of that same year, we had left that town altogether. So we had Christian Arts Center, had no place, and we taught these students. And then we left town. We said we can't. The relationship with this vehicle was also teaching in a Catholic university, and strange combination, wasn't it? And but because of what we were into and the grapevine was getting around, even though it was a large town. Oh, and also because T said to me, we've got to live under the same roof. And, I said, well, what's your husband going to say about that? And T she didn't see any problem with that. I couldn't understand, how she would not see a problem with that. And I said, well, I think there's going to be a problem with it. And she said, oh, no, he'll understand, because he was the first one to make a major contribution to the Christian Arts Center and to No Place. But then she went and announced to him that we were going to have to be in this separate place. And I don't know why, but the next level just blinded her. She thought that he would accept it. Of course, he didn't. And he thought that I wanted to steal T from him because of human interests in her. And so all the people or most of the people that knew us, all of this vehicle's relations and friends, thought that I had been bewitched by this witch. I'm not saying T would ever consider herself a witch, certainly not, but felt that I was under her spell and that my life was falling apart because of her. And the same thing, all of T's friends and relations thought that I was the demon that had come in and destroyed her marriage, her relationship with her children, and all. Well, this went at a very accelerated pace, and the husband would stop me in the middle of intersection in the town and try to pick a fist fight up in the middle of the intersection with me because I was messing up his life, and we had to get a court order to keep him from coming and tearing up things at No Place, and things were just madness. And we didn't know what was happening. I mean, all of a sudden the university job was going down the drain, and work at the Episcopal church was going down the drain. T was working less and less at the hospital, and we were spending more and more time at No Place. And the students were coming to No Place, and the girl I spoke of was a student at No Place. So when we left at midnight, December 31st, it's strange that we left that town at midnight, December 31st, and this is 31 days, December, the last day of December, whatever. We left there, and we went off to we rented a little ranch house in the hill country, and didn't know why, but we knew we had to be isolated. And then things started happening very rapidly. And he said, well, we can't just stay here because, we're going to have to earn a living while whatever it is that we've got to do and we're trying to do, we're going to have to earn a living. I said, we don't have to earn a living. He said, it's going to be taken care of. And he said, well, I don't know what in the world, who you think is going to take care of it. And so T went and took a job at a nearby hospital for 3 days, I think. Until, that was the end of that, and we were just doing then whatever we could do to survive, which meant we were doing anything. We were janitoring in churches, we were painting rocks, we were anything to get by. With no concern at all of what we put in our tummies or what we had on our backs, or how long it was gaps between laundry, or it was just like all of a sudden nothing meant anything to us except what we were doing, whatever it was. We just really didn't know what we were doing. And this individual who, well, when Cahotet came, we found ourselves in St. Louis in the middle of a snowstorm. And so, well, first of all, now I'd run you real fast. We went to Los Angeles from that hilltop area. We lived on money we picked up out of the beach. There was down at Hermosa Beach, the waves would wash in coins. I mean, literally wash in coins. And we could get $5 or $6 a day picking up coins that would wash up on the beach. And that bought us all the Taco Bells, all the tostadas that we needed, and then some. And we did that for a while. And then we migrated. All we had was a little sports car that Dosby, like a little two-seater sports car. And there's 2 suitcases tied on the back of the little Fiat sports car. And we migrated to Las Vegas and stayed in a back room of the metaphysical center of a very dear friend named Berta, who still has a metaphysical center there. And when we had a group there that gave a meeting there years ago, he stood up and he said, "These guys are for real." He said, "They were with me for so long a time, and I believe everything that they said." And he gave a real good testimony at one of our meetings. And then we migrated on up to Oregon and found ourselves in Portland. Coming down the hill, Mount Hood, as we were coming into Portland, the engine blew on the little sports car and just died. I mean, just fell apart and died a death right on across the street from an Ananda Marga house. And so we spent the next 2 months in the Ananda Marga house, sleeping on the floor of the Ananda Marga house. And they were very good to us, and they were very interested in what was going on with us, and we were regular attendants of the theosophical chapter in the town, and whatever else that we could learn by. We spent hours, just like we spent hours in this little chapel here during time. We had a friend offered us a house to stay for a couple of weeks here in Inverness, and we stayed there, during which time we told what we knew, which was just bits and pieces, to a writer that lived in the house behind us, who was the same writer who did the story for Jurassic Park. And he was very, very interested in everything we had to say, and he'd come back and just want more of whatever we had to say. And all of a sudden, one day, he was angry at us. It was like we were demons, and we were filling his head with stuff that would ruin his life. And he didn't want to hear another word. Just very suddenly. Well, we had this. After the Ananda Marga house, we went and we got some. While we were in one town, somebody ran into the back of the sports car, and an insurance claim came through from the damage that was done to the sports car. It was $1,600. And boy, were we rich. All of a sudden, we had $1,600. We got tired. We bought an old jalopy in Portland, and we put some decent tires on it. We spent, actually the money came through after we got the jalopy, and because we went to Gold Beach, and we had no money at Gold Beach, Oregon. And we were back on the Rogue River, way back in the Hideaway Campground, where all we could do was just study the Bible and freeze to death bathing in that Rogue River, and stayed in this little station wagon. We had a cot up in the back station wagon. One slept on the cot, one slept on the floor, and we were there for weeks and weeks by ourselves. We ate blackberries off the tree. We painted stones with astrological signs on them and sold them on the street of Gold Beach to make enough money to buy cream and sugar to put on the blackberries. And that was all we had was blackberries with cream and sugar on the blackberries. And we felt it was a feast. We felt like we were selling them. The blackberries were delicious, and we never got tired of them. And then we just started lacing the country. And we went to southern Canada a time or two, and we laced this country back and forth, just doing anything we could do to get by. Every kind of we dug test tanks for septic tanks, I remember, in Grants Pass. No, near Grants Pass at Rapids. No, it's right near Grants Pass, Oregon. Savage Rapids. And we dug these 2 6-foot, 2-foot wide, 6-foot deep, 6-foot long things in this backyard for $20. Buy us food for a time. I'm telling you all the crazy things. We didn't care what we did. We did anything. And it didn't matter. It really didn't matter. And we usually bathed in streams with that old, what's that? Bar, Castile bar, the cheapest soap that you could buy, and it was our shampoo, and it was everything. And this was vehicles that had been very particular about. And yet it meant nothing to us during this time. Nothing to us. Well, we just laced the country doing anything and everything for a long time. And that car that we called Serpentine, that green old Ford station wagon that had served as our house for all that time, died in St. Louis during a snowstorm on the night that Cahote. Yes, that's right. And no, that's not quite right. It died in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we took a plane from Charlotte to St. Louis. Now I can't even remember why we did that. I can't remember why we did it. But we took this plane on, I can't remember the reason why, but I had a credit card in my pocket that was still good. We had a lot of credit cards, but we didn't want to use it. But here was a credit card, a good credit card. And we had faith that if we used it, it'd be okay, it'd be paid for. That we didn't have to worry about it. So anyhow, we took this flight and got to St. Louis, and got there at midnight, and here we found ourselves at the airport. And when we got off the plane, there we were at a rental car place. And we took that same credit card, and we said, we don't have a car. We don't know what we're going to do. Let's just rent a car until we know what we're going to do. So we rented this car. And it was a Comet. It was the night of Cahote, and it was a Mercury Comet. It was a brand new Mercury Comet. And we rented that car and continued to lace the country. We would go and talk to people. We'd talk to ministers. We'd talk to anybody we could talk to, and we were thrown out of place after place. And archbishops would kick us out of their church, and sometimes people, little simple evangelists who had no education at all, would frequently be the ones who were more interested in what we had to say. But we visited, we went to go to Graham's home, we went to Falwell's home in Lynchburg, Virginia, and all these TV evangelists. We tried to tell them what we wanted to tell them. Most of them wouldn't even see us. Oral Roberts wouldn't see us. Unless we had an appointment, unless we were some of their followers, some of their... They didn't care what we had to say. They didn't care to see us. Anyhow, we rented this car and were oblivious to the fact that we had rented it longer. It finally dawned on us, we've rented this car longer than we originally rented it for. So we wrote them a letter and said, don't worry about it, we'll pay you. We're going to keep the car a little while longer. And then I remember a little while later we wrote a second letter. We said, don't worry, this is to the company we rented the car from. And then we were in Brownsville, Texas, and we went to see this reporter, and we told the reporter that we had a story to tell him. It was the most important story of his life. And he said, well, I'll meet you somewhere, because we said we wanted to meet somewhere in private, and we wanted to be where we could talk to him long enough that we could really have a chance to tell our story to him. Well, we had no idea what this guy thought. And this reporter thought we were going to tell him a story about illegal drugs coming across the Mexican border. And so he had placed policemen and undercover police, all around the motel and all. And we saw these people standing around, obvious that something strange was going on because they were watching us. And here we went in to talk to him, and we said, what are all these men, halfway up the stairs and down at the bottom of the stairs and at the door and all this to the reporter? And he said, well, I don't know, maybe it's because of your story. We got frightened, and so we left the motel. We took off running, and immediately they thought, uh-oh, something's wrong. We're running from police, even though they hadn't identified themselves as police. But since we were running, then they chased us. And we went and got in our little Comet and started driving away from there as fast as we could go, scared to death, not knowing what in the world was happening. And next thing we knew, a helicopter came down with a loudspeaker and cars coming from all directions, and they were saying, stop this car, stop. And the helicopter landed right in front of us, and the cars came from, it was better than the movies. And we were scared to death. And then, but they didn't know why they had stopped us. Because we were running. And then, as they were doing a check on the car, on the license of the car was reported stolen. And so they put us in jail. And we said, well, what charge? He said, well, stolen automobile. And I said, well, what charges for a T? And they said, stolen credit cards, petroleum credit cards. Because the girl that had offered her credit cards did not know that her husband had turned in those cards, his cards, stolen, to prevent anybody from using them. Well, anyhow, we were thrown in the Brownsville jail. I mean, the Brownsville jail was like the living in. It might as well have been a Mexican jail. And I don't, I'm not talking about any prejudice against Mexicans. I'm talking about, but boy, these were hard jails. There wasn't English spoken. We were thrown in with, at least I was thrown in with in a small room half the size of this with 40 criminals that couldn't speak English. Double bunks, just, you can barely crawl between them. One shower in the middle of the room, and that was it. T was a little luckier because the females' ward wasn't that full. And there was, it was funny because there was a gal in there that everybody thought was really Looney Tunes in the cell that T went in, and the minute T came in, she said, boy, you've got antennas. She said, I've never seen anybody with antennas before. Oh, wow. That was crazy. Well, when T and I were at no place and doing the thing we were doing, we had gone with care to get scarab rings that meant something to us, because while we were awakening, we were studying all this Egyptology along with everything. And when I went in the jail cell, I didn't realize that I had that scarab on, and here this fellow in the cell immediately saw it and immediately wanted it, and offered to protect me if I would give him that ring, which I very quickly did. He was in for murder. He had there were several in the cell that were in for murder, and there were some real Looney Tunes in the cell. Plus, they would shoot up at night until they were just out of their minds, and the behavior in the middle of the night was just unbelievable. And I was glad I had some protection. And this guy would go around with fanning his hand with razor blades to keep anybody away from me or away from him. And I had given him that gold scarab ring, and so he was protecting me. I hated to give up that ring. And I really, really hated to give up that night. But I got protection. Well, the car rental company immediately dropped charges. Had no problem, and it was reported to them that the car had been found. But the district attorney's office in St. Louis, where the car was rented, decided he was going to make some political points, and so he wanted to try the case. He was going to, follow through on the crime. So I was, extradited to St. Louis. He was extradited to, or not, because we were in Texas at Brownsville. T was moved to a jail in Houston. And T spent altogether 30 days in jail. And the charges were dropped on the credit card because the girl had had her husband drop the charges. So there's no record or anything on T's case. And I had a little public defender in my case that kept saying, listen, this is a, Mickey Mouse case, there's nothing to it, just, I'll take care of it, I kept staying in there, kept waiting, and T was, in the meantime, while I was trying to get out of jail, she was working as a nurse in the hospital, trying to pay a lawyer to try to get me out of jail. And finally, the public defender said, if you will just plead guilty, we won't even, there'll be no question about it, because you can get time served, because it's taken so long for your case to get on the docket. I didn't even bother thinking of the ramifications of pleading guilty. I was interested in getting out. So I pled guilty. And that's what got me into the courtroom, to finally get my case on the docket. Anyhow, I used to read these Dell horoscope magazines in jail. And I picked February the 13th. On February the 7th, I read the 13th, whatever it said for horoscope of this vehicle, and I said, that's the day I will go to see the judge. And that was the day. I went to see the judge. And I was released that day from the court. I got a sentence of 4 months, and I'd already served 6, so like I said, they owe me 2. But I am a convicted felon in the eyes of the law. Now, you could say, oh, isn't that awful? Isn't that awful? This vehicle's family members visited that little Brownsville jail and they could not believe that I had lost my sanity and let this woman that we call T lead me into whatever it was. Satanism, bewitched, under her spell. And of course her friends and family thought the same of me. Now so I watched the ones who had always looked at this vehicle as the shining star of the family, the one that, got more education and did all these things that they always wanted to have somebody they could be proud of, who then ended up going nutty. But the point I'm making here is that the biggest favor the next level could do us in having us move at an accelerated pace was to have events occur in a way that our credibility was lost in a hurry. We were so naive, we would write long letters about what we were receiving to individuals that we still thought were individually our friends in the world, trying to tell them about what was true, and that ended their relationship. Because we were then Looney Tunes in everybody's eyes, A strange thing happened, that the mother of T's vehicle never once turned against us. And that was extraordinary. She didn't understand But she trusted us. She never once even said, we even know that she never even said anything off color to any of the relatives in Pete's family. Her position was, I don't understand what's going on, but I trust that they believe in what they're doing, even though she had seen her daughter lose her husband and her children and all these things, and just in a matter of months, life turned completely in another direction. I feel like that was remarkable and very special that she was capable of doing that. Now, I'm not saying that it's necessarily true that every individual who wants to move at an accelerated pace in your overcoming of your worldliness has to lose all credibility in the world. But it did us a great favor. I mean, we both left all kinds of debts behind. We left the vehicles, loved ones behind. We ended up jailbirds. I mean, everything was blackened as far as our credibility was concerned. And which really, really helped, because then all we had was this pursuit and each other doing this pursuit. So, when you read what Jesus said to his disciples about you'll be hated by all men, and they will say all manner of evil falsely against you for my sake. That's true. That's true. And I know that you all have experienced that. If you haven't, you may yet have it to experience. Some of you have experienced it more than once. A number of times. Well, I felt that it was important that you really understand that I felt the Next Level did us a favor to give us an accelerated ruination of credibility in the human world. Now, also in the night, I felt that T was saying that I didn't quite carry the analogy that we were talking about far enough, as far as using the little analogy of horses and how man goes out to find horses. And I felt that the thought that was given to me was that if you would even think of the vehicles that you are occupying in that same analogy, think of these as those horses that got picked, and that you are not the horse, you're the rider, and you have to break the horse. You have to break the horse. I don't know if you've ever broken a horse. This vehicle has broken horses, and I imagine some of you have broken horses. But when you break a horse, it means that the horse resists. It does not want to give up its wildness. It does not want to be controlled. It does not want to do what the rider on it is telling it to do. It wants to throw the rider off, but the rider stays on and stays on until the horse quits fighting and says, you're going to do what I tell you to do and nothing else. Some horses can't be broken. Either that or the riders aren't persistent enough in breaking it. Now, as I said to you, I don't believe that the Next Level ever put a deposit in a vehicle that was incapable of being broken by a strong-willed driver or rider. And the vehicle that you're wearing and its programming, its genetic programming, its educational programming, its parentage, all of its programming is part of the package that has to be broken. Listen, you are occupying a living animal that has responses that even shock you at times, the way that it responds. And it's like you, at least I've experienced that many times. I I would think that all of you would realize that your vehicle has responded at times that would shock your mind. I've got what you want to work toward is not my seeing a vehicle that the rider is trying to get a hold of. But you want to see how fast you have so much control of that when I look at the vehicle, I see the rider and not the horse. Because the rider has so much control of the horse that it's the rider that then is projected. The horse isn't saying, I'm sleepy, I'm hungry, I'm tired of listening to this, I don't agree with that, or what's he doing that for, what's she doing that for? All those crazy things that are emanations of this animal that you're wearing. Now, you think I'm talking theory now, but you have to come in and take over that vehicle. Even if you, the mind, now wait a minute, where is that mind? That mind that is filling that soul is next level mind. Therefore it is not perishable mind. It does not, its days are not numbered. It experiences no pain. It has no handicaps. That mind is free. It has no age at all. It has no limitations. It's only the house that has limitations. So when the mind is running the house, it's no different than suddenly just a piece of machinery suddenly playing out if the machinery played out. Do you follow what I'm saying? But you have not, well, this to varying degrees from individual to individual, you have not learned how to identify with the amount of mind that is now in your soul that has been given to you from the next level. That mind has to increase so fast that you identify only with that mind. Not the vehicle, not with the old mind, not the mind of the creature you're wearing. That creature has a mind of its own, just like the horse in the corral had a mind of its own. And you've got to put it in its place. You've got to train it so that the slightest hand on those reins makes that horse go this way. And he's just waiting for your signal as to whether he's to back up or he's to go left or right, forward, and which kind of canter it is, or what exactly, so that you are so sensitive. He is getting his joy out of manifesting your desires. That vehicle you're wearing can even find a type of pride in serving you if you get control enough of the vehicle you're wearing. It can even be pleased. It can become refined for the first time. It can begin to act more like the mind, within limits. But you have to at least have enough control that that vehicle never does any behavior, both mental or physical, that could make a fool of you, or pitch you on the ground, or run you into the fence, or whatever else that it might do. And that not making a fool of you has to be around the clock. It can't be when we're in meetings or when you're among your classmates, but other times it has its way, and suddenly you wake up and say, oh, I let the vehicle have its way. I'm not going to do that again. And then it does it again. Oh, I let the vehicle have its way. That's not breaking the horse. That's not the mind taking over. Now, you have to experience enough abstinence of animal behavior in order to receive enough of that next level mind for that mind to begin to take over. So if you're not experiencing enough abstinence of human thinking and human behavior, you're not opening the door for enough of that mind to begin to take over. It's that same analogy we used last night, is that the higher octane next level mind cannot come in if there's still lower octane mind in there. Or if it begins to creep back in, or you permit it to come back in, it will go right out. And you have to work twice as hard to get it back in, because it's not convinced that you want it in, because you just made a fool of yourself and made a liar of your intentions. Now we all go through periods of difficulty in breaking the horse. But the next level, is like the Marine Corps. It wants a few good men. And that means strong men. And I'm not talking male. I'm talking individuals. But we don't get service in the next level by loving the next level and thinking this is just a real sweet trip. It's hard work. There is no task on this planet to compare to the work that it takes to keep your head free of doubt and judgments and human thought and human behavior and all the things that would stand in your way. Now don't forget, T still sets you up in order to develop your strength. And that's the way it's designed, because the next level wants a few good servants. They don't have any need for masses. They don't need any of us. They don't need me. I need them. Without them, I am nothing. But they do not. T does not need me. T could drop me like that, because T's allegiance is to T's older members.